Okay, I'm here. Hello, welcome. Two people. Thanks for coming. Okay, oh man. So things might look a little bit different in here. Don't mind the blanket. I'll get to that. There's a blanket in that window, and I have another window over here. There's also a blanket in that. That will all make sense later. Sorry for the late start. I was actually just I was working on a couple things. There's some pictures I want to show you tonight, and one, I wanted to make sure there wasn't any super identifying information in said pictures. Yeah, so I wanted to take some of that out and just double check. I don't want to like dox myself. I'm probably gonna dox myself a little bit as far as like the location in which I live, and that's fine. I'm not super overly concerned about that, but I just wanted to have a couple of things done and ready to show you. I'm not going to drag this out too much. I want to talk. I would love it if you all want to talk back with me, but understand that my experience, you may not have a whole lot to say about my experience other than like, oh, I'm so sorry, and that's fine. I appreciate it. But I have a point in bringing up everything I'm about to talk about, and it's something that's been boiling up in me for 4 or 5 years. There's Kay. Hey. Something that's been boiling up in me about 4 or 5 years, and I think I'm ready to at least start talking a little more openly about it. It's not that I haven't been talking about it, and if you follow me on Twitter, I think you probably get a good sense of where I'm standing. There's Foxy. Hey, Foxy. You probably get a really good idea of where I stand on some things. Anyway, I'll stop with the whole intro and we'll just talk about it. So, I know 2 of you in here right now are in Texas as we speak, so you probably have some experience with this as well. But if you're not aware, over the last couple of days, Texas has gotten very cold. And look, I'm like one of the first people who maybe used to make fun of Texans a little bit. And maybe not just Texans, but like maybe anything south of Wisconsin. I was born in Wisconsin. I lived there for about 5 years, I think, so I barely remember it. I don't consider myself from Wisconsin. Raised in Missouri. And so I have a little bit of experience with snow and winter weather and cold. It doesn't bother me that much. But things change a lot the older you get, and especially when you have kids like that. Your opinion on these things change quite a bit. So I used to kind of be in the crowd that's like, oh yeah, like a little bit of snow comes and Texas cannot handle itself. And there's a little bit of truth in that when we get just a light dusting of snow or some ice and people seem like they can't drive because they've never driven on it before, understandably so. And so yeah, maybe there's some panic. People buy eggs and bread, just clear out all the stores of eggs and bread, even though they're probably not going to eat it all. And in this case, didn't even have a chance to eat it all before it probably went bad. But so I have a little bit of experience with being maybe a tad overly judgmental when it comes to Texas, or when it comes to certain states in general dealing with snow. And toilet paper, yes, Foxy. Yeah, toilet paper for sure. If I keep touching my forehead, it's because my forehead is just like sandpaper right now. Ever since Monday night, it's just, I'm so dried out, I think, because I've just been trying to stay warm. But anyway, okay, historic snowstorm. Temperatures that have not been seen like ever in Texas. Well, maybe not ever, but in a very long time. I'm going to be looking up some stuff and showing you a couple of things. Here, I'm going to start with this. And again, those of you who are in here right now, you were in this with me, so I'm not telling you anything new here. But typically there's this thing called a polar vortex, right? You hear a lot about it in the north. It's typically this like round vortex. It's just swirling wind that brings like frigid temperatures and snow, and a lot of people are typically really used to it, right? Let's see if I can find what I was looking for. This is one article I didn't look up ahead of time. I apologize. Okay, that's not what I was looking for. Where is it? Hello? What's up? Oh, is this for my forehead? Yeah. Thank you. It's Neutrogena Hydro Boost. Ashley just bought this in for me because my forehead is so... You hear that? Maybe I'll put that... I don't know if I'll put that on stream or not, but thank you. That probably means she's watching. I saw this graph and I should have saved it. Is this the best? Okay, I mean, yeah, maybe this isn't exactly what I had seen, but yeah, the wife always comes to the rescue. This isn't exactly what I'd seen, but you see these jet streams kind of pushing warm and cold air, and everything kind of shifts down. I think this is actually probably from a couple of years ago. Is it this? Oh, is it this? Kind of. Well, anyway, this is how cold air moves. But I think these are typical. I'm trying to see the one that just came out here in February. Jeez. Look at that. No, I'm looking for one in particular. And maybe since I have to search for it so much, maybe that image was not... Basically, it looked like this. It looked like round circulation. But because... Yeah. Because the weather is changing. And we can get to that. Hi, Mrs. Nonder. Because the weather is changing, it's going in the circle, but now it's dipped just so much lower than it typically is. These aren't the ones I was looking. It's a little bit different, but you see how different all these can be. It's just that's last week of April. Anyway, very unprecedented temperatures. So we live near, we'll say, Bedford, Texas, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And they were forecasting for us. They're like, look, it's going to get bad. It's going to get snowy. It's going to get cold. There is very real possibility of outages, especially if trees get ice and snow on them and they break and they go over power lines. Totally understandable. So leading up to this, we were warned to a degree what was going to happen. And we could all see the forecast. You know, negative temperatures was definitely a big deal. So a lot of people prepared by, you know, maybe making sure they had some firewood. But, you know, it's like, hey, it'll be cold, but we'll just stay home. Like, we're not going to go out in it. We're not going to drive in it. And that leads me to, let's look at what some of the power companies were saying. So on the 12th, here's what Encore is. If you don't know, here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, technically I have TXU as my provider, right? But Encore provides the electricity to TXU, but I pay TXU. And then even above that, ERCOT is really who controls the power grid in Texas. So it feels like we have maybe several different choices in electricity company, and really we don't. It's all a monopoly. It is all owned by ERCOT, Encore, all of that. And it's weird how many middlemen are in this process. I don't quite understand that yet. Those of you in Texas, like, if you know how this whole thing works, let me know. I'll be glad to talk a little bit more about it. But as I understand it, it's basically a monopoly. So Texas wants to be all, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and we want to be independent, and we want to be not on the national grid. We want to we'll get to that too. See all these tabs I have up here? We're going to get to all this. But they want to be so independent that they don't want to be hooked up to a national grid. They also want to commodify it, so they want to earn money from electricity. And so really what ends up happening, though, is they're just hiding the fact that it's a monopoly. It's one company that just controls all of it and tells all these other companies what to do. So we're going to be looking at Encore, but just know that behind the scenes, it's really ERCOT that is telling them what to do, and they'll start talking about that. But a lot of people are saying Texas should have just prepared better. They should have just, you should have already had a generator. You should have had plenty of firewood. You should have, I don't know. What else could we have done? What else could we have done at -2? I don't know. But here's what they were saying leading up to it. So February 12th, that was the Friday before. We knew it was coming. Absolutely, we knew it was coming. Winter storm watch, winter weather advisories, like they're saying it's snow. It's going to get down into single digits and then down into the negatives. And so they're saying Encore urges Texans to prepare, right? What does this say? Am I going to lose my spot? Meteorologists expect the storm to bring snow, freezing rain, sleet, and strong winds across the service territory Sunday afternoon into Thursday. That's into today. They're monitoring it, challenging forecasts. That makes sense. Now's the time to prepare your family for severe weather. Write down any important numbers that you might need so you can report your outage. I'll get to that. You can report it on the app or calling. No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't. Or by texting out to this. No, you couldn't. Anyway, all right, storm safety kit, battery operated or crank radio, flashlight. Those flashlights, I tell you, they will keep you so warm in -2. And it reduces the fire hazard from candles. I do like these crank flashlights, though. I kind of want to get some crank flashlights because you would never have to worry about batteries and whatnot. I do think there are some things that I have learned from this, and I'm like, I definitely need to keep some things in my stockpile. But anyway, extra batteries, bottled water, reported on the app that has no power, and even if it did, doesn't have internet because no Wi-Fi or any mobile data. Yep, exactly. That's what happened to us. Keep your storm safety kit in a centralized area of your home. That sentence was junk. I got it. I understood it. So hang on. They're telling us, hey, we prepared you for this, and this is what we were told. Flashlights, crank radio, batteries, bottled water, first aid kit. You'll be fine. Right? You stay away from downed power lines. They may look harmless. You're going to be fine. You're going to be just fine, okay? Angry drinking, and I don't like it. It's just water, though. If it was vodka, I'd be concerned, but it's just water. I'm drinking because as I talk more like this, my throat tends to get all tight. I actually have 2 bottles for this. I have prepared for this stream. Okay. So February 13th, it looks like some people started losing some power, but most of it, I believe, that early on, was from some cars sliding in ice and hitting transformers, I think. The aggressiveness level at which you are drinking, that worries me. Okay, hang on. Is that better? Okay. So yeah, I think some cars and stuff had hit some transformers. That happens a lot. So if you lost power during that time, it was probably back up pretty quick. And then on the 14th, on Valentine's Day, they start talking about the conservation stuff. And this is the first time I had ever heard of this, ERCOT ISO. This is the first time. And wait a minute. Hang on.
Hello there.
Oh, hello there. Legend subscribed. Look at you, man. 3 months. Thank you. Legend, I appreciate you. I really do. I just hope you know how many bits you gave me last time, because it was a lot. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. But I hope you know how much you gave. I appreciate it. I'll drink aggressively for you. Okay. They tagged the wrong account here. Do you see, like, this is not the ERCOT. Please help Texas conserve energy now. ERCOT ISO has issued an energy conservation request, and this isn't a Twitter account. Okay, so this is when they start calling for conservation. You know, it makes sense. Turn your thermostat down a little bit. Don't use any lights you don't need. Don't use your streaming setup. It is a rant stream, sorry. We might play games, Kay. Like, if I get to the end of everything I want to talk about, we got time, we'll probably play Cowboys. But I wanted to get through this first. But there we go. So then February 14th, ERCOT ISO. This is the correct Twitter account. So they actually put in the right account now. We'll look at theirs in just a second too. Yeah, due to record-breaking electric demand, everybody's kind of like, I know I was charging up battery banks. I was charging up other laptops so that I could potentially charge my phone from those things. Because I thought, you know, at this point we were being told, hey, there could be some outages, you know, especially with the ice. Ice and electricity do not mix very well, especially ice on tree branches. Those tend to break and then, you know, snap power lines. Stuff that was really... it's totally understandable, totally. And if we had to go without power for the majority of the day or even a few hours, not gonna be a problem. Okay, so still calling for conservation, reduce as much as possible from the 14th to the 16th. All right, conserve energy. They start this whole conservation campaign. So they kind of, it seems to me like they knew who the load is going to get pretty bad, but at this point they had not said, hey, millions of people are going to lose power. So obviously either they probably didn't know, but I have a feeling that they knew something bad could potentially happen, and they weren't saying it. They were just kind of being like, hey, like, you really should do this. Okay, 14th, so that's Sunday night. All of this pretty much hit. We personally lost our power Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. I have a notification on my phone from my alarm system that is exactly when we lost power. Technically, we lost power for about an hour at 2:30, I think. And I think that's where they tried to get us on a rolling blackout, but it didn't work. And then it went off again at 6:30 and had been off then when we woke up. So again, this is still 14th. They're still just talking about conservation. They do have some crews out there starting to work on some power lines, because there was some damage to power lines. Absolutely, there was damage to power lines, and it's understandable. All right, but here on the 15th, then, what time was this? Can I see? 12:17 a.m. So right, barely on the 15th. EEA1. I think that's well, Everett. Hey man, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate that. Subscribe with that Prime. Hey, if you got that Prime membership just laying around, you know where to send it. I am doing great, Everett. How's it going? Talking about the horrible... I haven't even gotten to the worst yet. I'm just kind of ranting a little bit about what's going on in Texas here, now that we're back on the grid. Good. Okay, so emergency level 1, energy energy conservation is needed. There are no rotating outages at this time, so a little after midnight. All right, and then EEA2, I don't know what all the levels mean. I just know that it's increasing here at this point. I think then that was 1 a.m. then. And then 3. This level 3 is when they started talking about rotating outages. I've had some people over here in Virginia lose power, but I've been fine. That's good, man. Like, yeah, and there's been a lot of people who didn't get affected by it, thankfully. And I'll get to that part as well. Extra emergency agents 3. Yes. I like it. So this is the first time they started talking about rotating outages, right? 125. To reduce demand on the electric system. We urge Texans to put safety first during this time. Traffic lights and other infrastructure may be temporarily without power. So at this point, they also start telling us don't go anywhere because the weather's really bad. So don't try to get on the roads. The roads are probably going to be really bad. Just stay home. It's a rotating outage. Right here, later on that morning, They did the rotating electrical outages. These typically last 15 to 45 minutes, but may vary depending on winter weather, and grid conditions. So at this point, when I woke up and I saw these alerts, I was like, okay, cool. It just went out. I happened to wake up around 6:30 anyway. It was literally 6:31 or so when I think it came out. And so when I woke up, I told Ashley, like, hey, we don't have power, but they're saying that it's a rotating outage. This will probably just work. This will probably just be like maybe an hour tops, and it'll come back on, right? My timing was about 30 minutes to 1.5 hours. Yeah, I heard a couple other people say it was about an hour each. Hour on, hour off, hour on. This is my problem. The communication here was so bad that, and I think I'll make a good case for that. And understandably, this was unprecedented, but the communication here was just horrible. All right, so this is all we get is, it may vary. More rotating outages. Let's see. During these rotating outages, customers are encouraged to take safety precautions, such as staying inside, avoiding travel, and checking in on neighbors. Here are some tips. Oh, I like these tips. Close blinds or curtains to keep in some heat. Close off rooms to avoid wasting heat. Wear layers of loose-fitting, lightweight, warm clothing. Eat and drink. Food provides energy to warm the body. Avoid caffeine and alcohol. I was drinking a lot of coffee. Well, not when the power went out. I didn't have any coffee for about a day. Stuff towels or rags under the cracks, under the doors. So, see this window? Has a blanket on it? I have learned. And I did hear a lot of people saying that if you had a room with very limited windows, and maybe somewhere in an interior room, you block out that window, you get everybody huddled together, and you probably would survive. But the problem comes with those of us with very young children and people who have medical conditions, or they just need to be warm, or they have oxygen machines, all that kind of stuff that cannot be without power for a very long time. And some people never lost power, and others were out for 3 MFing days. Yes, 3 days. Ooh, just you wait. And okay, I'll get to that part. So, still on the 15th, my brother with his wife, who is pregnant, didn't have power for 2.5 days. It was just above freezing in the house. Yep. And Texas houses, this is the other thing, when people are like, oh, Texans aren't prepared for the cold. Absolutely. Our homes are not built the way that homes up north would have been built. Our house especially was built like way back in the 60s. And it's a sieve. It just leaks air everywhere. It's not horrible in the summer. We do have to probably pay way too much in electricity just because it's not insulated correctly, but it just wasn't. They aren't built the same way. Even brand new houses, they don't invest in the kind of stuff that you would in further north, where you have to deal with this stuff all the time. It just doesn't happen here either. Exactly. So why would they spend all that time and money building homes to be for this literally once in a lifetime event, right? So that's why it's like you can't take it out on Texans too much, because it's just our entire way of life is not set up to manage these things. And we need to talk about what we can do in the future to do better when it comes to this. We have to do better than this, because I have a feeling this is not the last time that this is going to happen. Maybe not this year, but just in general, these things, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing this happen more often within the next 5 years. I'm no expert. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So conservation still remains critical, even though you're on a rotating outages at this point. All right, and here then they really start like tagging ERCOT and stuff a lot. Like, hey, this is the agency that manages Texas Electric Grid. What? This is the first time I've heard of ERCOT. I knew about Encore because sometimes when your line goes down, you'll reach out to your company, like I reach out to TXU, and then they say, hey, technically we don't own the lines. That would be Encore. So then you reach out to Encore. They tell you like, hey, we'll have somebody come over and fix it, and here's how long it's going to be out and all that kind of stuff. So then to have Encore say, oh, actually, we're not even the ones that control all this. That's ERCOT. and we'll show you how ERCOT handled that as well. So they report extreme weather conditions caused by many generating units across fuel types to trip. Reports extreme weather conditions caused many generating units across fuel types to trip offline and be unavailable. Rotating outages likely to last through the AM and could be in effect until weather emergency ends. This is February 15th at 6:12 a.m. Monday. So, extreme weather conditions cause many generating units across fuel types. There is a crew of people who would like you to believe that this was all a reason why we shouldn't have green energy. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like green energy solves all of our problems. I don't know. I'm not a climate guy. I'm not an energy person. But what I do know is that if you want to sit here and just specifically blame wind turbines or solar or anything else, that's not what we currently run on in Texas. We don't run on any of those things. We have some of that. I think it's like how much nuclear power. You know, I don't know enough about nuclear power, and I don't even know if I'm saying nuclear right. I don't know enough about it oops, I spoiled what I was going to next. I don't know enough about it to really say like, yeah, definitely. But because I know it has its own issues, right? You got to do something with all that waste, and that waste is pretty harmful. So I don't know, but yeah, maybe 5 to 10% is renewable in Texas. So even if it was true that the wind turbines froze up, which I'm pretty sure it's not. If anybody has a source on that, I would love to see that. I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I wanted to tell you more about my story, really. So we'll come back to this. But I just wanted to point out that Encore themselves was saying that this was across all different fuel types. Not all, it just says across fuel types. And it tripped them to be offline due to the cold. Okay, due to the severity of the electric generation shortfall, our expected outage length of 15 to 45 minutes has been significantly extended. Outages due to this electric emergency could last for hours, and we ask you to be prepared. In addition, we are responding to separate outages caused by record-breaking winter storm that continues to impact our entire service territory. We're doing everything possible to respond to each of these power emergency events. And we remain in close coordination with ERCOT, and we appreciate everyone's patience. So again, they're just saying, hey, it may not be 15 to 45 minutes, but it could be significantly extended. Phone lines and reporting systems experiencing a record influx of inquiry. Basically, at this point during the morning, I could not get on the app to even look. I think at one point I got on early, and it had told me it'd be on by 9. And I was like, okay, we can last till 9 a.m. from 6:30 to 9. That'll be fine. And then after that, I could never get back on the app. It kept saying there was an error, and I tried calling, and it just rang and rang and rang, and nobody answered. So my dad works in nuclear power. It's incredibly efficient and environmentally friendly. The waste that is dealt with is really, really small and easy to deal with. Do you know what they do with the waste? I've heard what you're saying too, and I tend to believe you, I think. But what do they do with, even if it's a small amount, because it's radioactive, right? Or am I not understanding nuclear? I don't have anything against nuclear. I think that we should be looking at all different forms of power until we can become less reliant on the ones that are the most destructive. Sort of. Definitely not a nuclear fission or fusion scientist, so I'll defer to the people who know. But I'm pretty sure, and I should have looked this up too, I'm pretty sure that some people said there was one nuclear facility. Do we have one? I think we have one. Yeah. Comanche, STP, Mitsubishi Nuclear Energy System. What? Oh, equipment supplier. Let's see. So probably Comanche Peak. Oh yeah, Glen Rose. Okay. Glenrose. Dude. So there's like a camp that we go out to in Glenrose, and we go out almost every year. So much better than Chernobyl. And there's this whole sheet that they put in the kitchen of this place that's like, hey, here's what to do in case of a nuclear fallout. And it's terrifying, but like I understand it doesn't happen that often. Basically, waste is stored deep in facilities and packed in clay and stone. Most of the radioactivity is depleted after use. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. So yeah, we got Comanche Peak. So did Comanche Peak... Nuclear power plant. Freeze. 2011, wow. 2 days ago. I don't see anything. I know I'm just reading headlines, so obviously. That's a 2019 article. Nuclear plants are unaffected by the cold. I don't know what this website is, so I'm not going to go to it. But Ricochet, all these... I don't know anything about these websites, so... And this one says conservative conversation and podcast, so at least they're telling us what they... I don't know what this is. Okay, but if that were true, I'm sure that there would be some articles about it. So it looks like maybe the nuclear plant was okay. Anyway, okay, so we have two of those. Be interested in more conversations about how that could have helped us, right? And I think those are the conversations we need to have right now, because everything just crumbled. It was basically like a domino effect. Dominoes, not the pizza. A domino effect where, you know, your power goes out, so people rely on gas. I mean, we relied on our hot water a lot. We filled up jugs of hot water from our hot water heater just to have something to put under our blankets, you know? Sometimes the fuel can be recycled too. There are a couple of different methods. Once the fuel rods are depleted, they go into big water tanks where they cool. After they've cooled, they can be dealt with. It's neat because nuclear power doesn't have any emissions, literally just steam. Yeah, I heard about that too. I'm totally up for talking about more nuclear within reason. I think it is just scary to a lot of people. You know, Chernobyl, nukes, you know, like that is just scary to a lot of people. So we'd have to do a lot to convince people that's good. All right, so here we are going into the 16th. Okay, well, hang on. So 15th, two major issues affecting our customers. I remember reading and rereading this tweet right here over and over again. Big stigma. Yeah, definitely. We're doing everything possible to respond to each of these emergency events. Customers don't need to report outages at this time. So this was 4 p.m. So we had spent, my wife, myself, and our 1.5-year-old had spent all day in our house, just thinking, okay, it was supposed to be rolling. It didn't. So then we checked the app, and they said 9 a.m. 9 a.m. came and went. We checked the app next, and it crashed. It wasn't working at all. And this was the first sign to me that like something else is going on here. Something bigger is happening here, and it could be pretty substantial. That's got to be the biggest downside of nuclear power is Chernobyl, right? It's just like people being terrified of it. Yeah. I had heard something recently just about how it's hard to get rid of that waste, but you know, from what Everett says, it doesn't seem like it's maybe that big of a deal. It's just, we would have to look at everything, you know? But that would be such a big down, like you'd have to fight that stigma a lot, and you'd have to show people the science behind that, and the science is complicated, you know? Yeah. It's probably the reason why at Comanche, okay, that they post those things at like Glenrose, saying like, hey, here's what you do in case there's a nuclear fallout, and it shows you like all the radius of where you need to get in order to be safe and evacuation routes and all that, probably just to like help people calm down. But for me, I was like, wait, what could happen? There are so many safety measures in place. It's really, really hard to mess up. Yeah. I mean, how many Chernobyls has there been other than Chernobyl, you know? So you got to kind of take that, you know, but also we haven't really invested that much in it, and it could happen. So it's a little, I admit to being a little bit wary of it and a little scared of it, but I would have to see more. All right, so at this point, you know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm getting a little worried, and my wife and I were sitting in our dining room, which is typically our coldest room in the house. But because at this point, and this picture was taken way earlier, at this point, it was warmer in there because the sun was coming in through the windows, and typically that's the coldest room in the house. But we were sitting in there just kind of trying to get warm, and it didn't feel too bad in the sun. But knowing that nightfall was coming. Chernobyl is the worst. There's only been like 3 major disasters. Even Chernobyl is really hard to mess up. They just had a perfect storm of screw-ups and laziness that led to it. And there are massive changes made at the industry because of it. But if it's maintained right and not screwed with, you'd think it would be just fine. I hope so. Okay, so yeah, we're sitting in our dining room, and I'm starting to get a little worried. And just note, like at this time now, this is all we have. We're being told that there was rolling blackouts, and then being told, oh, some of those blackouts may be a little bit longer, and then hours later, just kind of being like, there's, you know, 2 major issues. And this made it seem like, oh, if you don't have power, if you're not on the rolling power outages, then that means they're working on your lines. That's the vibe that I got. But that's not what was going on. So this is at the point where I really had to start making a decision about like what are we gonna do? And this is probably where like Kay will come in, and I'll tell you right now, there's one thing I would do differently. But of course, had I known how bad things were gonna get, so I started thinking about how we could at least keep warm for the night. It actually makes me kind of sad to think about this. I don't know why. Let me pop up some pictures here. So I, you know, while my wife was getting warm in there, I forgot a couple of pictures actually. The morning that we didn't have power, that's kind of a horrible looking picture. The morning we didn't have power, I made oatmeal in the fireplace so that my boy could eat oatmeal, and I ruined one of our pots doing it. I told my wife, I'm gonna do this, and like, you know, sorry if it's gonna ruin your pot, but you know, he needs to eat and needs to be warm, and hey, we're not gonna be without power that long, right? They're telling us, you know, 15 to 45 minutes, then maybe an hour, then by 9 a.m. and you know, then all of a sudden it becomes 4, right? And all that stuff was still happening. So 4 o'clock, I start thinking about it. Oh, and the other thing we had done is inside the, did she send me that picture? Ashley, if you're still here, did you send me the picture of the little fort we made in the dining room? I don't know if you did or not. Let me see. Doesn't look like it. But so in our dining room, we have the table, of course. And so I put some blankets over it, thinking it'd just be fun for my son to kind of play in the fort. And also thinking it might kind of trap some of that heat from the sunlight in there. And it worked. Like, it was really, I was like, wow, it's actually really warm in here. You'll send it? Okay, thank you. It's really warm in here. If it has baby Z's face in it, I may not show it on stream, but I can take care of it if it does. So yeah. that was kind of fun. And so I got this bright idea. I was like, okay, what if I built like a little lean-to out of some of the blankets and put it as close as I'm comfortable putting it to the fireplace, where we had a little bit of firewood, some starter logs, all that kind of stuff. That would probably keep us warm throughout the night. Remembering, of course, that the forecast going from Monday into Tuesday was -2, the low that night, and even probably lower in some places. So my hindsight being 2020 now, I would not have done this. But there was a couple things I was worried about. One, I wanted to be home because they were telling us the roads were horrible. They had said earlier, stay home, don't go anywhere. And so I'm like, I don't want to brave the roads. And I also assumed that other people were probably going to lose power too. So Kay and his at his house, which is very small, we'll get to that. But at his house, he had power for most of the day. So I was like, there's no way that's going to last if we've been out this long. And then they send this out, unable to predict when grid conditions will stabilize. All customers are urged to be prepared for continued extended outages and prioritize safety. Warming stations are available in many areas. Check online. So like at this point, when was this? Was that the 16th? Oh, that was the next day. Yeah, that was the 16th. We're still on the 15th here. Yeah, so Kay had power the whole day. And so one was I didn't want to get on the roads because, one, I don't have a ton of experience driving in this kind of stuff. And two, it was, we're being told don't go out. It's not going to be good. And then also I'm worried about the pipes in my house. I know what happens when pipes freeze. That has been drilled into my head from a very long time. From when I was young, that like, hey, you got to cover your faucets outside. You have to drip some water. So I was a little worried about, like, I don't want to leave the house and sacrifice, getting everything flooded. The other reason I didn't want to leave the house too is because we are literally, as we speak, going through a mortgage refinance on this house, and we have to get an appraisal, which means somebody has to come out and check just kind of check on the house and make sure everything's in good condition and appraise it, basically, right? And I'm just having this thought that, like, our pipes are going to burst. It's going to flood the entire house, and this is going to probably keep us from even being able to refinance. And we're going to save so much money refinancing. So this is a big deal for us. Like, it's going to be a big deal. So I'm like, I don't really want to leave the house, and it doesn't seem safe to leave the house. So I didn't know what to do at that point. So let me see. Oh, there we go. She sent a picture. Okay, hang on. Let me show you the... Oops, I gotta save it first. Sorry. His face isn't in this one, so this will work. It's all so sad. I don't know why it makes me so sad. Okay, I think it'll take a second to download it. Okay, there it is. I'm just gonna show this one. I think it'll be okay. Okay. Yeah, we should be good. We never lost power. So if you'd been there, what would you have done if a pipe burst? Shut off the water so that it didn't flood the entire house. I'm assuming you were going to just say turn off the water. There you go. Which you did after coming to our house anyway, so really you could have come over sooner. So again, we were using the water. We were filling up, those jugs of water that I drink here on stream? We had several of those because I had just bought some. And so we were filling those up with hot water and using those to keep us warm. So like the hot water was our only source of warmth during that night. So I didn't want to just shut it off. Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, it was because we were being told that the roads were just unpassable and you absolutely shouldn't do it. That's really it. So this is the there's a little tent we made. There's a little tent we made underneath the kitchen table, or the dining room table rather. Now the dining room we know is not gonna sustain us. We weren't gonna stay there that night, but it got me kind of this idea of like, what if I could trap in some of that hot air, especially if we're gonna be staying in front of the fireplace all night. So, I don't know for sure if this was a super great idea. So I'm just going to put a disclaimer on that. I understand the risks of carbon monoxide poisoning. I get that. So I tried to put our little makeshift thing here. I tried to put this, I was trying to look excited. I tried to keep it as far away from the fireplace as I could, because I really didn't want that to happen, right? So there's a good gap between the fireplace and us, but you know, just covered this whole thing with blankets. Did this. So, and this too was me trying to keep busy during the time when, like, you know, so this is about that time that I had seen that tweets, probably about 4 o'clock or so. Just trying to stay busy really, because all the while I'm hoping the power is going to come back on. I'm going to do all this work and the power is just going to come back on all of a sudden, and we're gonna be like, oh, look at us, we just, you know, oh, we didn't, you know, or especially if we had decided to leave and then the power would just immediately come back on, you know. But yes, Kay, I agree with you that I could have come over earlier, especially in hindsight, for sure. I learned a lot of tricks to stay warm the last 4 to 5 days. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, there's Ashley's gift, Valentine's gift right here. They're Lego flowers. She built those. I showed them on stream a couple days ago. Man, this already feels like this is a month ago. I swear. This was just a few days ago. I feel like a different person. So yeah, we built this little tent. I kind of get sad seeing it. You know, we had the fire going. I was making the oatmeal and stuff on it. We had some starter logs. I had a couple of pieces of firewood in the back from a tree that had fallen a while back. I hadn't had a chance to split all of it, and some of it was really too hard to split. I think at that point it had gotten too cold. So again, thinking, you know, we can probably make it through the night. But I can tell you now I won't do that again. This is outside of our house, down the street. This was fairly early on, I think, during the day. This doesn't look like a lot. In fact, there's a lot more coming after this. I didn't get a ton of pictures of the full extent, but that's right down the road. This is some of the backyard. That was probably at about 2 inches or so. I went out to take some pictures and stuff around and then came back, and within Mrs. Nonder, what would you say, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, my footprints, you almost couldn't see them anymore. And that's the dining room, so of course the snow is coming up to the windowsill and all that kind of stuff. So for Texas, pretty bad. For any of you up north, you're like, that's nothing. This was very early on in the day when this was taken. But you're probably thinking, that's nothing, that's fine. But for us, it was a pretty big deal. All right, so we spend the night. We go to sleep probably super early. Our kid goes to bed at like 7, so we decided to go to sleep around the same time, because it's like, what else are we gonna do, right? You know, I had downloaded some episodes of like some Netflix shows for him on an iPad, and so we're just trying to get him to calm down. And finally, he did fall asleep. He fell asleep before we did. Actually, I have a picture of that. Let's see. I did go ahead and block his face out in this one. So yeah, there we are sleeping. We're sleeping in under the tent there. Mrs. Nodder, you said it was actually fairly warm in there, right? When the fire was going? I never found it to be super particularly warm. It did seem better than when we were not underneath it. But I think now, had I known that our firewood supply was not going to make it through the night, I probably would have made a different plan. I think I would have gone with this. I would have put all in my office here. I would have put blankets over all these windows, and hopefully would have done this while I still had power. and created kind of a little hot room in here. And we all should have come into this room warmer than out of the tent. Yeah. Look at that cute face. Look at that cute, adorable face. You can see my forehead's already getting all wrinkly there because it's just so dry. You have like the world's thinnest blankets on. Not on us. It looks thin. This is several blankets on top of us right here. Or do you mean these thin blankets here? We had it layered. Yeah. It does look like I only have like this crocheted shawl, but no, I had a blanket underneath. He had several blankets. He sleeps hot. So he was running pretty hot that night. I don't think he honestly cared that much, but I was getting worried. I was getting worried about him specifically, for sure. The one over me. Yeah, no, I was, this brown one that I have my hand on, it is actually over my shoulder as well. And then I have this over that as well. There are several blankets under there. So it looks like that's the only one, but this one is on top of this one. So he fell asleep. And I just kept getting up like it felt like he was sweating like a little inferno. Yeah. He sleeps hot, very hot. In hindsight now, we don't have to be so worried about how hot his room is upstairs. I think he'll be fine. But I don't think I slept at all. I just kind of laid there, closed my eyes, and then once I felt the fire go out, I would immediately get up and put more wood on it, and then at one point I ran out of wood, so I just started putting in the little starter log things that we had. We also had some of those wooden fire starter sticks, and I was just burning those, and they would burn for a little while. But I kept getting up to do that. And once I realized, like, all right, we're getting pretty low on supplies here to burn, I'm getting a little worried. But I thought, hey, I think I had fallen asleep a little bit. So I was like, it's probably about 3 to 4 a.m. right now, if I had to guess, based on like how many times I've gotten up and, and all that. So I look over at my phone, I reach for my phone and look over, and it's like 11:58 at night. And at this point, I'm like, it's just bone cold in that house. The coldest I think I've ever been. And, Ashley, of course, she had trouble sleeping too, so she was awake, and I just looked at her and I'm just like, I don't know if we can make it. I literally don't know if what we're doing is enough. And maybe it was, like, maybe we would have probably been okay, but then I kept thinking, okay, so we're going to get to morning, right? On the coldest day, right? This is that Tuesday, then the 16th is going to be the coldest out of those days. So, like, we make it through the night, and then what? Like, it didn't seem like we were going to get power back at that point. And everything they were saying on here is just like, emergency, our crews are working to restore things. There's been so little generation available that we have been unable to rotate additional outages. As soon as enough generation is available, we'll rotate outages with a focus on those who've been without power for the longest period of time. And so, at that moment, I was like, do you think that, Kay at his house, that they still have power? And so she calls, and luckily my mother-in-law picks up and is like, yeah, they still have power. So we're like, all right, it's either, this makes me so sad to think about, it's either die here or take your chance on the road. Like that, I know we didn't have it the worst. Like, we were so fortunate that we knew someone who had power. We're so fortunate that they had power and that we were able to get there. But, like, those were the choices in front of us. And I can't tell you, it doesn't make me angry, but how disappointed that makes me that, like, it's 2021. I don't know if I'm expressing this right. It's, I don't know where I was going with that, so I'll drop that. But this kind of makes me sad, Whoa. How did I hit my daily step goal today? Oh, I guess I was going up and down the stairs a lot. Anyway. Okay, I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. So we went out. We packed up everything we could in a short period of time. And we're just like, let's just take our chances out there because it's better than staying here. It was just had to move back in with Kate as ugh. JK. So we left, closed everything off. The one thing I wish I had done again at that point was turn the water off. I left it dripping. But I was still just so worried about that. But at that point, I'm more worried about us making it through the night than the pipes in my house. So I guess finally my survival instinct kicked in, and I'm like, let's just go. So we packed everything up. We woke him up. He freaked out for a little while that we were waking him up in the middle of the night. He's a pretty good sleeper, so... it was 1 a.m., so there wouldn't have been much traffic. Yeah, that was the other thing, too, is like, if we had to go, we at least know we can take it slow, and we don't have to try to speed our way there, right? And I wish we had taken some pictures or video of the way there, because the roads weren't that bad, really. We did have to take it super slow. At this point, it was mostly snow, like, actually just snow, which is good for driving. If you have to drive in it, pure snow is better because it's not ice. There's still some slippery parts. Most of the traffic lights were out or flashing. So we rolled through a couple stops. You know, when you're in the snowpocalypse, the rules are out the window. Simply because I didn't want to hit the brakes hard enough to stop. So we just kind of rolled through a couple of them. We're rebels like that. But the thing that got me was, like, as we started going, there was a couple roads that were closed that I guess were just too impassable for people. And so we had to take a couple detours, which is fine. But we ended up on, like, a pretty major intersection over here. And on the way there, there's, like, all these businesses, just random things that obviously weren't open. But they had all their signage lit. They had all of their... all of the lights leading up to it, it was all lit up, but nobody was in them. You could look in the windows and nobody was there, but it was all lit up. And then the one place that was lit up but had people in it was Waffle House. Waffle House was like, people were just standing room only in Waffle House. And it looked like they didn't care. They're just like, yeah, come in. We have power. It's warm. Come on in. I saw some police there, probably some EMTs, and they were just standing there just trying to stay warm. But all these other businesses around them that aren't 24-hour businesses had all these lights on. So here we are being told by Encore and ERCOT and all these people, conserve electricity. And it's like, dude, we're just trying to survive here. Like, what? We're not the ones using all this electricity. There's all of this stuff on. And it's like, why weren't those companies told, hey, when you leave for the night, turn off your power? You know? I understand the frustration and sadness for the thousands of years human civilization, all the things we've survived as a species, and now we're at a technological height, and we're still struggling to survive. Exactly. Perseverance landed on Mars today. A technical feat that, like, is so incomprehensibly hard to pull off that literally, like, when it landed, the people working there just jumped up and just applauded and went like, yeah, and like fist bumped each other because it's so hard. And we can do that, but we can't protect our power grid when we need it the most. Like, this is the time, and this is what we pay for as consumers. We pay so that we can survive, not just be comfortable. You know, being comfortable is important too, but like we're trying to survive out here. And but yet we can land a rover on Mars. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, because that's pretty darn cool, and I hope they find some cool stuff there. But it's just like, people are just freezing, and at the same time we are landing rovers on Mars. I can't help but feel that this is not the kind of future that, this is going to sound really corny and really cheesy, and I'm sorry, but this is not the kind of future of Star Trek. In Star Trek, in the Star Trek lore, let me tell you a little bit about the Star Trek lore. They had reached such a point on Earth where there was no more hunger, there was no want, Everybody had what they needed. That was likely due to the power generation that they were able to get for, what do they call them? Replicators, right? Although I think replicators weren't even a thing early on. Anyway, I don't really know my Star Trek lore that much. But it was basically like, hey, we solved all the problems on Earth. So now, what do we do? Now we go out into the stars. Like, let's focus on the quality of life on the planet that we currently have before we talk about ruining another planet. And I love sci-fi, I love Star Wars, I love space travel. It's not that I want them to stop, but it's just such a juxtaposition of what we just went through and what millions of other people even went through worse than us. And then landing a rover on Mars. And then a certain senator taking a trip to Cancun. It's that juxtaposition, right? It's hard. It's hard that we haven't. I don't expect us to solve all of our problems. I don't expect Star Trek future. I really don't. But it sure does feel like we should have certain things under control by now. That guy, yeah. We might, maybe if we have time, we'll talk about him, but I feel like we're probably all on the same page there. So anyway, so that as we're driving, I'm just like, really? They're telling us to conserve electricity when people are out here dying and all of these lights are on. This doesn't make any sense. So we get over to Kay's house. They got power, they got heat. It's nice. I tell you, I don't care what I had to sleep on, if I had to sleep on the floor, if I had to sleep standing up. The second we got in there and it was warm, it was so nice. It was so nice. We have better uses for our time. Yeah, probably. But it was so nice to just, yeah, and it was relieving. I was still worried about the house because I only let the water drip. I should have went ahead and shut the water off before we left. But by the time I made the decision to go, I was like, we just need to go. Like, I don't want to wait any longer. Let's go. And we just started packing everything up that we could. So, we spent the night there. It was hard to sleep. Didn't sleep very much. Our kid thought that he had slept the whole night and thought it was morning, I guess, because he didn't want to sleep either. But all in all, I'm not going to complain about the experience there because it was just so great to have electricity. It was so great to just be warm. And then the next day, Kay and I went back to my house it seemed like, we're getting these tweets still, right? Weather impacts are going, second winter storm is coming. Here's how to use your generator that you definitely have, and also the gasoline that it would take to definitely run that generator, by the way. So, they're giving us all this stuff, so I'm like, you know what? This may not be back up soon. But nobody was saying, hang on, let's go to ERCOT. There's a scam. We should be able to restore some customers this afternoon due to additional, hey, look at that, wind and solar output. And additional thermal generation. Number of controlled outages we have to do remains high. We're optimistic that we'll be able to reduce the number throughout the day. That was 16th. So it just seemed like this is not going to just end all of a sudden. I also start hearing, and at this point, I'm not even showing you the screen, sorry. At this point, I was also hearing from other people that were not ERCOT, that were not Encore, like, hey, I know someone who knows someone who knows someone who works there. And they're saying it could be 8 days. Like, literally, somebody said that. It could be, like, up to 8 days before they get power back. And I'm like, good grief. I take all those with a grain of salt, the he said, she said thing. But I kept hearing, like, hey, it could be a while. I'm hearing from so-and-so who knows so-and-so, and they're saying it could be a couple days. So I'm like, all right, well, let's go back to the house. Let's get a couple more changes of clothes. Let's get some more diapers for Zeke. Let's get what else did we get? We got some of the food that was here so that we could use it before it goes bad. Stuff like that. Laptops, Nintendo Switches, the important things. So we did that. Kay made that trip back with me. It wasn't bad. We took our time there, didn't die. So, and at that point, I turned the water off. When I turned the water off, then, I really think that probably saved us. But there was one part that I didn't turn the water off to, and that was this tub upstairs. They have this regulator valve that helps like balance hot and cold water, and it's plastic, and it just snapped and broke. I noticed this after we got home the other day, but I got that replaced, so that's good. That seems to be the only pipe damage we had, and I really think that that's because we came back and turned off the water. So in hindsight, I would have probably turned off the water that first night if I hadn't. So anyway, yeah, everything was fine. Then we stayed with them until yesterday. Yesterday, I think our power came back on around 10 or 11, I think it was. Mrs. Nonder can correct me on that. I basically we have like a Ring doorbell thing, so I just happened to check it, and it was online. And so that's how I knew we had power, but we weren't about to just like drive home right away. One, because the roads could still be bad, and two, because I really fully expected it to go off again. And they had told us that at some point they said they're no longer doing any rotating outages. That might have even been yesterday. Yeah. So there are still some people without power now. Most of that, though, is going to be due to the fact that like maybe a line is down or something. We obviously have power back now. We're back home. Came home, tested the water, found out about the shower, and then fixed that early this afternoon or late this afternoon. And we have water again now too. So we're doing good now. It's just, this is the wider point I want to make. It isn't just about like, look, woe is us, look at what we went through. Because I have some friends who actually, like had their whole house flooded because of this. I wanted to look at some of these too because I haven't seen all these. So we got off very well. Look at these people. Don't walk on the highway. But yeah, like people in apartments especially too, like oof. Frozen faucets. So these people had even left their faucet running. They're ice skating on their pools. Lots of people too in Dallas have pools because it gets so hot here. It's pretty practical for people. I know Mrs. Nonder would love me to get one, but I'm also kind of glad right now that I didn't because there's a lot of people whose pools have been completely broken. Frozen toilet water. I'm telling you, it got dangerously cold. Dangerously cold. For not having power. It would have been dangerously cold even with power. My poor heater, like, oh, the olive oil, wow. So what he's saying about temporary controlled rolling blackout for 38 hours, that's kind of where I was at. I was getting very upset that, like, I would have taken the rolling blackouts. Like, that's understandable, you know? My buddy and my aunt and uncle both have nearly ruined houses now from busted pipes. That's so sad, man. This fish tank's, like, solid. Poor fish. But yeah, like, so that was my horror story in my mind, was just like, we're gonna have these water parks, geez, that just get why is that water park even active? Anyway, yeah, these horror stories of just people's whole houses just getting ruined, and I'm just terrified of that. I know, you know, hopefully, you know, your aunt and uncle and all of them have good insurance. But it's still like, that is a headache, and that's about as destructive as a fire can be, especially if it's not dealt with quickly. So it's just sad. And I know let's see if there's any stats yet. Oh man. Animals freezing to death. Let's see. And I know Texas is not alone as well. I know that some other places have had some rolling blackouts and whatnot. I will focus mostly on Texas, but This doesn't seem to have any stats. And how cold is it? It's very cold. Death toll climbs 1 day ago. Relentless winter blast is blamed for at least 24 deaths this week. 1/3 of Americans are also on the path of a second winter storm. Snow and ice headed to the East Coast. So, people are dying. And there's two things. There's two things I wanted to talk about with that. One of those is like the obvious conversation we should be having about privilege, right? I'll try not to make this part too long. Yeah, see, if we had an actual tent, yeah. What was I about to say? Yeah, so the conversation about privilege is basically like those who had power this whole time, right? I don't blame you at all. I'm not mad at you. I'm nothing like that. But this is a conversation that we can have about privilege, right? You probably didn't buy your house because it was on the same grid as a hospital. And that seems to be, I don't know if this is completely confirmed yet, and there might also be other factors to consider. But it seems like a lot of places that had things like hospitals on their grid, on their little section of the electric grid, were possibly spared from any of the rolling blackouts. If you got spared from the blackouts, they did whatever they could to keep that online. Given the situation, I don't know what else they could do. I don't think it was a targeting of some people I saw like on TikTok saying that this was like all the rich people were fine. They all had power. That's not true. Even Ted Cruz didn't have power, which is why he ran to Cancun. Because he was uncomfortable. Like, sorry, Ted. So I don't think it's a rich versus poor thing. I don't think so. Now, the poor are more adversely affected by these things, especially homeless. Like, they don't even, if their shelter is out, if in Austin, Texas, they're not even letting them camp out anymore, then what are they supposed to do? Like, they can't even have their tent cities. So probably most of us didn't buy our homes asking, hey, is this on the same grid as a hospital? I did see a meme where people are saying they're now asking that, the next time they buy a house. But, I think that's mostly a meme. But none of us did that beforehand. So if any of us kept power through no fault of our own, we didn't have generators, we didn't have a big backup plan, we just happened to be spared for whatever reason, that is an immense privilege. And it's a privilege that you didn't earn, you didn't fight for, you didn't pull yourself up by your bootstraps for that. It just happened. Maybe not quite luck of the draw because it was probably an area thing, but that's privilege. And, so many people want to tear you down whenever you mention that, like, oh, that's pretty privileged, right? They want to just tear that down and be like, how dare you? I got to where I am by the sweat of my brow. It's like, well, I'm not saying you didn't work, but I am saying that there are situations in life that will put you at an advantage and someone else at a disadvantage. And all you have to do is just be able to acknowledge that. Help out people where they're needed. That my mother-in-law and Kay, they were completely willing to take us in. I had other people offering to take us in as well. People who were living a little bit further away, so I didn't want to, I was already nervous about driving anyway, so I didn't want to go even further. My brother and his family said we could come there. So there was a lot of people who were using that privilege to help people. And that's the point, right? Instead of going to Cancun. Oh, hey, is this new? Senator Ted Cruz says traveling to Cancun amid winter weather crisis was a mistake. He issued a subsequent statement calling the trip. I didn't see this. The story comes amid the ongoing crisis in Texas where millions were left without power. Ooh, really? Look, it was obviously a mistake, and in hindsight, I wouldn't have done it. So this is the conversation I want to have about privilege. It's like he has the right to go on vacation, I guess. He has the right to go to Cancun. It is definitely tone deaf. Deaf or deaf? Tone deaf. Yeah, tone deaf. For sure. And in fact, at first he was saying, I saw a clip where he came back and he was like, yeah, you know, it's so sad what's happening in Texas right now, and I'm on my way back right now to help and do all that. And it's like, that is an example of your privilege kind of coming back to bite you a little bit. Now, you'll notice I left my house. I had a privilege of knowing someone who was willing to take me in, right? And I was doing so to protect my family. So if Ted Cruz lost power, which he says he did, and he was trying to just get his family out of harm's way, I understand. But just send your family. And then be honest about it. I think the trending with hashtag Ted fled. I think not being honest about it is my biggest problem. And honesty is really the name of the game when it comes to this last thing I want to talk about, and we'll wrap it up. Kay, if you're still here, we'll play Cowboys in a little bit. But the other side of this is them, of course, blaming power outages on solar, when there are numerous things out here that you can find just as easily as I did, talking about how they knew that the grid was vulnerable. In fact, this all kind of plays out to be true when you think about, where is that? Sorry, this place looked super familiar for a second. This all kind of plays out when you look at what ERCOT and what Encore were saying, where they weren't really saying that, like, hey, you're going to be without power for a long time. Because if I had that notification at 6:30 that morning, I would have said, let's pack it up and go to your mom's right now, because at least she has power, right? But they weren't telling us that. They weren't telling us that, like, hey, if you have power right now, most likely you're on a grid that is going to keep power. So if you know anybody on those grids, maybe you should go stay with them. Like, if they had said that, that would be fine. But we know that they weren't. It's not that they were lying. It just felt like we were not being given the full truth, right? We're not being given the full story. Turn this down a little bit. Oops, that's way too low. Can I get a 2? There we go. Wait, did that? No, we're good. Okay. So yeah. Officials with the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the energy grid operator for most of the state, said that the state's power system was simply no match for the deep freeze. Nuclear units, gas units, wind turbines, even solar, in different ways. The very cold weather and snow has impacted every type of generator. Every type. So these guys get on, specifically Governor Abbott gets on, and he says, no, this is all about the wind turbines. The wind turbines didn't work. Wind turbines may freeze in bitterly cold weather, reducing efficiency, and the blades ultimately stop spinning. A mix of freezing temperatures and precipitation is paralyzing wind farms in Texas 3 days ago. However, there are ways to weatherize these things. I don't know if I'll find it in this particular thing. And the reason we know this is because, like, hang on, like, what in Canada? Does wind turbines freeze Canada have? Wind turbines can experience icing up to 20% of the time in winter months. Special cold weather packages are installed to provide heating to turbine components such as the gearbox, yaw, and pitch motors and battery, according to the Canadian government. Why wind turbines in cold climates don't freeze. This can allow them to operate in temperatures down to minus 22. We only got to minus 4. minus 22 degrees. Now, obviously, we got to 4 in Bedford. Sorry, it might have gotten lower, but it definitely didn't get to minus 22. These things, these cold weather packages are not installed on our wind turbines. But, no, IHOP, I don't care. But as Kay said earlier, this is how much, here, we'll look it up. This is so easy to do, but the problem is that people hear the first thing they hear, and as long as it fits within their narrative, they just go with it. So as soon as they hear, we're gonna go to this one next. As soon as they hear somebody like this joker say that it's the wind turbine's fault, then that's just what they go with, because they're like, oh yeah, we don't like alternative forms of energy. We only want to burn oil. How stupid is that? Why do we only want to burn oil? We can burn oil. I'm not saying we stop today, but it's like the fact that you wouldn't want to invest in different types of energy when stuff like this happens is ridiculous. It's crazy. Why would you fight this? I know why you wouldn't fight it, because of money. That's why you wouldn't fight it. It costs money to winterize these things, and you don't want to spend money. End of story. You don't want to spend money. And you also don't want to be on the national grid, because you don't want to be regulated. Texas has dodged federal regulation for years by having its own power grid. The U.S. has 3 power grids. One covers the eastern U.S., another the western states, and the Texas grid covers nearly the entire state. The grid has been thrust into national spotlight as extreme energy demand and overloaded frozen utility plants contributed to widespread power outages across Texas. So, look, it froze in a lot of different places and a lot of different parts of our system, not just windmills. If the windmills did, I'm just calling them windmills, I don't know if that's the right term, but if they did freeze up, it's because we didn't invest in the packages to make sure that they wouldn't freeze up, because they didn't want to spend the money on that. It is all of it. All of it is about money. Every last little bit of this is about money. They want to be independent because they want to not have to be regulated, which probably means money, right? Because if they're under regulation, they probably have to follow certain guidelines for how they obtain and use oil and things like that. And nobody wants to do that, because it costs money. It's all money. All of this, every little thing here is money. It's all money. They failed to heed warnings that left the state's power grid vulnerable to winter extremes. So, in a world where we can land a rover on Mars, and in the same week, like 24 people, probably that body count will rise, can die from freezing. Now, those deaths probably happened in a combination of the freezing weather and probably road accidents and stuff like that. But literally, like, if we didn't have a place to go, if we didn't know somebody with power, I'm not sure what we would have done that night. I probably at that point would have said, let's get in the car and drive around, like, or at least heat up in the car. But I don't know what we would have done. That same world that can send the rover to Mars can't seem to provide for its own people. And look, I'm not looking for handouts. I pay for my electricity with a job, with a capitalist job. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm looking for the thing that I pay for to be worth the money that I pay. And the thing that I pay for that literally I need to survive, it needs to operate correctly during these types of situations. This is the very reason why I pay you, because I don't want to die. That's it. I'm not asking for anything else. There's a whole other conversation about people who can't even afford that. So it looks like I lost everybody, so I'm just going to stop there. I probably have so much more I want to say about this, but I'm coming up on 9. I've been doing this for an hour and a half. This is going to be a very long clip. I'm gonna probably post this to YouTube. Ugh, I don't know if I'm brave. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for listening to me rant. It's just, look, at the end of the day, it was just scary. It really was, especially with a small child. If it had just been me, you know, like, I could huddle up, I could be fine. And so many other people were less fortunate, but that's the point. When we talk about privilege, it doesn't have to be this knee-jerk reaction of like, privileged, everything I have, I get by the sweat of my... No, like, sometimes it's just you happen to be literally in the right place at the right time. It's all about what you do with that privilege at the end of the day. Are you going to use it to help other people, or are you going to use it to try to keep things status quo so that you can continue to benefit from that privilege? And that applies to a lot of different stuff, obviously. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with the privilege? All right. All right, Kay, let's be